The legislature in Virginia is fastly working to take your guns away for those of you Virginia folks. How is that affecting us? How will it affect us? And what is going on there? Let's do an update on Virginia right here at Set Apart Homestead. Hi folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead, the prepared homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for watching. Before I get started, I want to mention that on my website, I just posted an article that I've been working on an introduction to herbal medicine. So if you want to go check that out, it's thepreparedhomestead.com, and I'll leave a link below in the description. I think there's pretty good information on the article if you want to go check that out. So as of the making of this video yesterday, which would have been Monday, the Virginia legislature started their session of voting on all the gun control legislation that they're trying to push through that state. Now, I'm not going to do a whole lot of recap because I'm pretty sure you all know what's going on in Virginia. But I wanted to kind of bring some of you up to speed of what's kind of happening now, and maybe kind of help you understand the real totality of what's going on. This isn't just, your run-of-the-mill gun control legislation that you'll see out of, states like New York or California or New Jersey or Maryland, places like that, or Chicago, Illinois. This is some pretty ridiculous stuff. And it's from a state that, well, pretty much since it became a state, has always been considered, the good old boy, conservative, gun-toting, hunting, pro-gun state. And so I think that's a big part of why it's just blowing people's minds that this is happening in Virginia. There were several bills that did make it out of committee yesterday. So you got to understand, this stuff has been talked about for the last few weeks. The session started after their winter break, and so the bills are now in the committees. And they're working their way out of committees and through the House side or through the Senate side, and then for their they're hoping to make them to the governor's desk, where he's already said that he would sign these bills. So, for my information, yesterday there were some bills that made it out that would restrict purchasing a handgun to one a month. So you can only purchase one handgun a month. They passed a red flag gun law, or at least got it out of committee, a red flag gun law. They got a bill out of committee that will basically put restrictions on background checks, that every firearm sold or transferred in the state of Virginia, regardless of whether it's private or not, must go through a background check. So there's some, and there's many more things happening. Last week, they passed a bill that banned firearms in the Capitol and other Capitol buildings there in Richmond. So this stuff they're serious. They're hardcore. And of course, as you all know, it has really upset a lot of the red-blooded Americans. So much so that on the 20th of January, they're planning a protest, a peaceful armed protest in Virginia. So, I'm not on here promoting it. I'm not on here telling you not to do it. Just letting you know. And if you're interested, you can find places online that'll give you the information on that. But these bills, for those of you that, haven't really looked into them, you're just hearing, wow, they're passing this gun control. These bills are ridiculous. Now, supposedly the assault weapons ban bill got killed in committee, but that doesn't mean it's completely dead. I'm sure that, if all these other bills start passing, that one will rear its ugly head again, probably under some different name, attached and tucked in under some other big bill. But they are passing stuff that basically, if they get what they want, these Democrats in Virginia, that any gun that was manufactured, pretty much, at least the design was from the last 100 to 120 years, would no longer be allowed for ownership. Any semi-automatic handgun will be banned according to the bills that they want to pass. Pretty much any semi-automatic rifle especially semi-automatic rifles that use a removable magazine. Those would definitely be banned, because the bills say, the way they have written these bills are quite ingenious, got to give them that any magazine or a firearm where it uses a detachable magazine and it is capable of putting a magazine in that firearm that protrudes past the grip or the frame of the firearm, it is considered illegal. So if you have a semi-automatic handgun and the factory magazine is flush with the bottom of the frame, but of course, there's always those aftermarket magazines that you can get that hold more rounds, and they may protrude this much or they may protrude this much past the frame, then that firearm, not the magazine, the firearm is illegal. Not just to own, not just to purchase, but if you own that firearm, you will have to give it up. So anyone that owns your Glocks, your Berettas, the old Colt 1911s, any of those, if it is capable, if somewhere on this planet, someone has made a magazine that will protrude past the frame, the grips of that firearm, then that firearm is no longer legally allowed in the state of Virginia. So it's absolutely insane. And on every one of these laws, just about every one of them, at the bottom of the law, it basically reads, and when it lists all the things that would make that firearm illegal, and then the last thing, it basically reads, and any other thing that the law determines, is able to interpret that would be similar to these. So basically, it's opening the door for any law enforcement officer, any judge, any district attorney, prosecutor to say, well, this particular attachment to this firearm is close enough to this other stuff that we'll include it too. This is not about gun safety. This is not about personal safety. You all know this. This is about tyranny. This is about taking your rights away. And I know a lot of people out there might say, well, that's just Virginia. I don't live in Virginia. If you don't like it, move. The problem is it's not just Virginia. Virginia is like the litmus test. There are already 16 other states that are proposing, there's at least representatives in 16 other states, and almost every one of those 16 states are typically conservative or southern Midwestern states, okay? So we're not talking all the liberal states, where they are proposing legislation very similar to what we're seeing happen in Virginia. Let me tell you, folks, the people in Virginia are losing their minds. It doesn't take very long online to find interviews and footage of people, not just your average, hillbilly that lives out in the woods in Virginia, and there's a lot of those. We're talking law enforcement officers, other state representatives that are saying that people are ready to go to war over this. The Attorney General of Virginia basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, that these laws will be enforced, period, no matter what, that we are not going to maybe enforce them or kind of enforce them, that these laws will absolutely be enforced by the long arm of the law, whether you like it or not. They have proposed increased spending in law enforcement, increased spending in jail facilities, because they're anticipating that they're going to be arresting a lot of people because of this, these laws passing. There's also bills being proposed and pushed through that will, if you're a law enforcement officer within the state and you do not enforce these laws, you will not only lose your job, you'll lose your pension, and you will no longer be allowed to work as a law enforcement officer within that state. And so I know a lot of people I've heard this said, well, the state can't tell the local police department to fire someone. That's correct. But your commission as a law enforcement officer is through the state, okay? It's a state commission that is issued by the state, that it's approved. Your license, basically, to be a law enforcement officer, and they will revoke that. And they will revoke that and no longer allow you to serve as a police officer or deputy sheriff or just an LEO within the state of Virginia if you refuse to enforce these laws. So they're going after the law enforcement officers, and most of them, the vast majority of them in Virginia, do not support this legislation, but they're telling you, you have a wife and children at home to take care of. You have mouths to feed and rent and mortgage to pay. And if you do not enforce these laws, do you want to be homeless? Do you want your children to starve? Basically, that's what they're threatening them. It's a blackmail. You enforce these ridiculous, unconstitutional laws, or you're not just out of a job, but you're out of a career. They have taken the gloves off in Virginia, and people need to be aware of it. Now, as far as this peaceful armed protest that's being planned, I am not on here promoting it, and I'm not on here discouraging it. But what I'm telling you is that is a perfect place for something bad to really happen. And I know that many of the people going there are saying, then bring it on, let it happen. But it could go down a different way than what a lot of people think it might happen. A lot of people think, and it could happen this way, that it could be the start of a civil war type of a conflict. But the reality is I'm afraid what will happen is a few people will start it, and it will be just the fuel that they need to put on the fire to arrest all those people, confiscate their guns, no longer allow them to own firearms, and then have even more fuel to push their legislation through to say, see, this is what these crazy gun owners do. This is why we got to take away these guns, because this is what they do. They show up with guns and they start fights with them. I don't think it's going to look like, the old Boston Tea Party or the Boston massacres and stuff, where you saw colonialist facing off against redcoats. That's probably not what we're going to see. Possible, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. So I have a bad feeling that this peaceful armed protest could go south real fast. So if you are considering going and to being at that, I think you should really think and really plan. There are rumors already of MS-13 gangs that are flooding into the city. There are rumors of other, gang-affiliated groups that have ties, at least there's been suspicion of them having ties to being paid by certain government agencies that will remain nameless. These fascist groups and stuff that are, or anti-fascist groups that are, that just like to cause problems. And there have been many of reports of them kind of flooding into that area in the last couple of weeks. So I don't think that it's going to necessarily be that peaceful. Time will tell if it's going to erupt into something more. But I'm telling you, folks, what is going on in Virginia is it's awful. I mean, it's New World Order, it's Agenda 21, it's everything. And then you hear all these people. I see them online, and they're like, oh well, the president will take care of it. He's pro-gun. The president has done some good things and some things that I can sit back and say, okay, he did the right thing there. But when it comes to guns and the Second Amendment, he has really not been that solid on it. His past before he became president usually spoke about gun control. He has mentioned things of taking the guns and due process later. And he has not spoken up yet about this. And I don't think he wants to get involved in this. Whether it's because of a specific reason where there's a deal done and he knows what's going to happen, or because he just doesn't want to get involved with it politically. But there is no sign whatsoever. And then there's also the people that say, well, it'll get worked out in the Supreme Court. And that may be true. But that process can take years for it to work out in the Supreme Court. And at least it can take months. And by the time it makes it to the Supreme Court, how many people will have been arrested? How many people will have died or been injured or had their homes invaded and property stolen from them before it finally makes it to the Supreme Court? So there's that to think of. The damage will already have been done by the time it makes it to the Supreme Court. So this is a real powder keg situation in Virginia, and in the next few days, in the next couple of weeks, especially, eyes need to be on that. I know there's all kinds of things happening on the planet and in the United States right now that everyone's watching. So it's a lot to take in. But this stuff that's going on in Virginia, it's some pretty serious stuff, and I think it's something that we have not seen in American history. This level of totalitarian control, this level of complete disregard for freedoms, for the Constitution, and just, many rights, not just firearms rights, that are being absolutely stomped on and destroyed in Virginia. And these legislatures and this governor in Virginia, they don't care. It's not this thing that they can kind of, twist it that these things fall within the, constitutionality. They don't care. They don't care that they are completely shredding the founding document and the highest law of the land of this nation. It means nothing to them. And it's absolutely scary. And if you start looking at the backgrounds of some of these people, I mean, they're just flat out, Marxist communists. These guys aren't even, Democrats or far left socialists. These guys are hardcore communists. And they have decided to pour all their money and their energy into what was once a very conservative state and still is, for when you look at it by county. Over 90 counties now, and there's only 95 counties in the state of Virginia, and 90 plus counties have stood up against this. So the vast majority of the state, it's just unfortunate that the population density is all pretty much in one city, and they are controlling the rest of the state. And you know what? That is very true of most states. Most of your states are that way. I can think of many states where, it would not take much of an influx into one city, one major metropolitan area to completely flip that state over to where the rest of the state's votes would no longer matter. And they know that. And that's part of this push for illegal immigration. This, we're seeing so many liberals leaving liberal areas, of cities and stuff and moving into these other areas. That's part of the reason why, is to start flipping these other states and changing, because they know they can't roll, the UN can't roll through the streets and control us, or the global, governance or anything like that, as long as you and I, own firearms, as long as there's so many people in this nation that's willing and capable of protecting their own, individual rights. They know they can't do that. And so that's why firearms has always been at the top of their hit list. And it is going on right now in Virginia. And folks, you need to be watching that. Please comment below. Let me know. This stuff is changing almost by the hour, so I know I'm not probably getting you the most updated information. So let me know what you're finding out. I know there's some of you that actually live in Virginia and probably have a lot better, take on what's actually happening in the state. So let's keep this going. And those folks in Virginia, they need your prayers. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.